"Hands up! Filthy hands where I can see 'em!" Officer Calloway roared as his boot exploded through the Avery family's front door. Flashlights cut through the dark, slicing across the narrow hallway as shouts filled the air. "Same kind, every time," he spat, sweeping the house like it was already condemned. His rifle locked onto Ruth Avery, trembling in her nightgown. "Please, this is our home," she whispered, voice breaking. The blast swallowed her voice before mercy could reach her. Ruth collapsed beside the couch, blood spreading fast. "Target neutralized," Calloway muttered. Marcus Avery dropped to his knees, pressing her wound and calling 911. None of them knowing the man they'd just ambushed was a former Navy SEAL commander. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The living room glowed softly in the blue light of the TV. Marcus Avery sat back in his worn leather recliner, his attention drifting between the military documentary and his wife Ruth, who was curled up on the couch nearby. She had her reading glasses perched on her nose, reviewing patient files from her clinic with the dedication that made her such a respected nurse in their community. Their phones buzzed simultaneously. Imani's face appeared on the video call, her bright smile lighting up both screens. "Just checking in on my favorite people before bed," she said. "You should be sleeping, baby girl," Ruth said, but her voice was warm with motherly affection. "Says the woman still doing paperwork at midnight," Imani teased. "Dad, make her go to bed." Marcus chuckled. "You know your mother. Once she starts something, she has to finish it." They chatted about Imani's latest social media campaign and Ruth's difficult cases at the clinic. The conversation wrapped up with quiet love yous and promises to meet for Sunday dinner. The house settled back into peaceful silence, broken only by the soft voices from the TV and the rustle of Ruth's papers. The crash came without warning. The front door exploded inward, wood splinters flying through the air. Before either of them could move, blinding light and deafening bangs filled their kitchen. Marcus's military training kicked in instantly, 20 years of muscle memory taking over. He dropped low, scanning entry points, cataloging threats, his breath controlled and steady despite the chaos. "Police! Don't move!" Multiple voices shouted over each other. Ruth had stood up, her medical reports scattered across the floor. Her hands were raised high, her voice shaking but clear. "We're unarmed! We're... weapon!" The shout came from an officer at the front, Caucasian, early 30s, aggressive stance. His finger was already squeezing the trigger. The gunshot cracked through the air. Ruth's body jerked backward, her reading glasses flying off her face. She crumpled to the kitchen floor, her floral robe spreading out around her like spilled watercolors. Marcus moved with controlled precision, every motion deliberate. "Officer, stand down. I'm applying pressure to a wound." His voice carried the unmistakable command presence of a SEAL commander. He reached for a dish towel, pressing it against the spreading red stain on Ruth's side. With one hand maintaining pressure, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. The operator's voice crackled through. "911, what's your emergency?" "This is Marcus Avery at 1242 Maple Grove Lane. I have an officer-involved shooting victim requiring immediate medical attention. My wife has been shot. I am applying pressure to a chest wound." His voice remained steady, professional. "I am currently in my kitchen. There are 2 mugs on the counter, 1 knife on the cutting board, 1 dish towel being used for pressure. There are no weapons in this room." "Get your hands where we can see them," an officer screamed. "Stand up," another demanded. "Back away from her." Marcus kept his voice clear, knowing every word was being recorded. "I am maintaining pressure on my wife's wound. I cannot comply with contradictory commands. I am unarmed and not resisting. We need immediate medical attention." Minutes stretched like hours. Ruth's breathing grew shallow, her eyes fixed on Marcus's face. He kept talking to her, to the 911 operator, to the officers, maintaining control of the situation through sheer force of will. Finally, sirens wailed in the distance. But when the EMTs arrived, the officers blocked their entry. "I am asserting medical necessity," Marcus stated firmly, his voice carrying legal weight. "You are on record obstructing emergency medical care." The lead paramedic pushed past the hesitating officers. As they loaded Ruth onto the stretcher, Marcus's eyes locked with Officer Calloway, the one who'd fired. Badge number 4471. Young, scared behind his bravado, already reaching for excuses. Marcus memorized every detail of his face, every tremble in his trigger hand, every bead of sweat on his forehead. He said nothing as they wheeled Ruth out, but his silence carried the weight of coming consequences. The emergency lights painted the walls in alternating red and blue. Neighbors gathered on their porches, phones recording. Marcus followed the stretcher out, his hands covered in his wife's blood, his movements still measured and controlled. He could feel Officer Calloway's eyes on him, could sense the growing realization that they'd made a terrible mistake. The ambulance doors closed. Ruth disappeared behind them. Marcus stood in his driveway as the sirens faded into the distance, watching the first hints of dawn creep across the sky and through his shattered doorway. The morning light revealed the full extent of the damage: splintered wood, scattered papers, the blood-stained dish towel on his kitchen floor. His hands were steady, his breathing even. 2 decades of combat training had taught him how to channel fear into focus, pain into purpose. He looked down at Ruth's blood on his fingers, still wet in the growing light. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room buzzed overhead as Marcus sat rigidly in the hard plastic chair outside the trauma bay. His hands were still sticky with Ruth's blood, dark red stains drying in the creases of his palms. Officers Calloway and 2 others from the raid stood awkwardly by the entrance, their eyes darting everywhere but at him. Marcus pulled out his phone, his movements deliberately slow and precise. He opened the voice recorder app, then spoke with the measured calm that had once helped him interrogate war criminals. "Officer Calloway, badge number 4471, he said clearly. "I'm requesting the names and badge numbers of all officers present during the incident at 1242 Maple Grove Lane." Calloway's jaw tightened. "Sir, you need to— State Law 38.2.14 requires officers to provide identification upon request," Marcus continued, his voice steady. "I am making that request now." The 2 other officers shifted uncomfortably. One of them, younger and visibly nervous, muttered, "Badge 4892, Officer Peterson." "Badge 4517, Officer Martinez." The other added quietly. Calloway's face flushed red. He took 2 aggressive steps toward Marcus, hand resting on his holster. "Listen here." "Officer Calloway," Marcus cut him off, not even bothering to stand. "Your body language suggests you're attempting to intimidate me. Please note that I'm recording this interaction, and your hand is currently on your weapon, despite no threat being present." The younger officers backed away slightly, creating distance between themselves and Calloway. They could sense something in Marcus's composure that their superior officer couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge. "You're interfering with an active investigation," Calloway snapped, but his voice wavered slightly. Marcus kept his phone steady, recording. "Please specify which investigation. The warrant execution at my residence? I'd like to review that warrant now, as is my right under State Law 42.1.7. Before Calloway could respond, a man in a pressed uniform with captain's bars approached quickly. "Mr. Avery, I'm Captain Henry Doyle. Could I speak with you privately?" Marcus stood slowly, his movements controlled. "I'm happy to speak with you, Captain. My phone will continue recording, as is my right under state law." Of course," Doyle interrupted, leading Marcus around the corner to a quiet alcove. His expression was a mixture of concern and calculation. "Mr. Avery, I want to be straight with you. There's been a serious mistake." "A mistake?" Marcus repeated, his voice flat. Doyle lowered his voice further. "Wrong door. The warrant was for 12/24, not 12/42. We'll make it right. Medical bills, repairs, whatever it takes." Marcus studied the captain's face, noting every micro-expression of discomfort. "Make it right how, exactly?" "Chief Halverson would like to meet with you at 9 a.m. to discuss restitution." Doyle wiped sweat from his forehead. "We can handle this professionally, quietly. No need for things to escalate." "Escalate," Marcus echoed, letting the word hang in the air. "My wife is in surgery because your officers didn't verify an address, because Officer Calloway shot first and thought later. And you're worried about escalation?" "The chief will make this right," Doyle insisted, extending his hand. "You have my word." Marcus looked at the offered hand, a gesture of false peace, a bureaucrat's attempt at damage control. He shook it anyway, feeling the captain's palms slick with nervous sweat. 9 a.m., Marcus confirmed, his grip perhaps a fraction tighter than necessary. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical updates and paperwork. Ruth was stable, but critical. The bullet had missed her vital organs, but she'd lost a lot of blood. The surgery would take several more hours. As the sun began to rise, Marcus walked the mile back to his house, his shoes crunching on broken glass from the flashbangs. Police tape fluttered in the morning breeze, yellow barriers marking off his front yard like a crime scene, which, he supposed, it now was. His front door hung crookedly from one hinge, the wood splintered and destroyed. Marcus ducked under the tape and stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the empty house. The kitchen was a mess of scattered papers and overturned furniture. Ruth's reading glasses lay broken near the refrigerator. The blood stain on the tile floor was still wet, dark red against the cream-colored ceramic. Marcus stood over it, looking down at where his wife had fallen. The dish towel he'd used to try to stop the bleeding lay crumpled nearby, discarded by the crime scene techs who'd photographed everything while he was at the hospital. "You came into a SEAL's house," he whispered to the empty room. "You don't even know what you started." Around him, the morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes and broken dreams. The coffee maker clicked on automatically, a routine reminder of what should have been a normal morning. Down the street, he could hear his neighbors starting their days, car engines turning over, screen doors slamming. The world was waking up to business as usual, but in Marcus's kitchen, time stood frozen at the moment of that first gunshot. Ruth's half-finished medical reports still lay scattered across the floor, her patients' lives and needs now on hold, just like hers. Her favorite mug sat on the counter, coffee grounds still waiting to be brewed. Marcus returned to the hospital shortly before 8 a.m. His clothes changed, but his resolve hardened by the morning's quiet reflection. The waiting area was nearly empty, just a few nurses changing shifts and an elderly couple dozing in corner chairs. A flat-screen TV mounted high on the wall played morning news at low volume. He settled into a chair with a paper cup of vending machine coffee, his body aching from the night's tension. The coffee's bitter aroma reminded him of Ruth's morning ritual. She always said hospital coffee tasted like warm dishwater, but she'd drink it anyway, determined to find something good in everything. The news anchor's voice suddenly sharpened. "We're going live to a press conference with Police Chief Renee Halverson regarding last night's officer-involved shooting." Marcus's hand tightened on the cup as Chief Halverson appeared on screen, her steel gray hair perfectly styled, her uniform pressed and gleaming with brass. She stood at a podium outside police headquarters, American and state flags hanging lifeless behind her in the morning stillness. At approximately midnight, she began, her voice crisp and professional. Officers executing a lawful search warrant encountered resistance at a residence on Maple Grove Lane. During the warranted entry, a suspect interfered with officers' duties, creating a chaotic situation that tragically resulted in injury to a civilian. Marcus's jaw clenched. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. He could see how easily it would slip into public consciousness, becoming the official truth. Our officers followed all proper procedures, Halvorsen continued. Body camera footage confirms their professionalism in a volatile situation. The screen cut to edited clips, quick flashes of darkness and shouting. Ruth appeared for a split second, her hands raised but her body turning slightly toward the kitchen counter. The footage cut away before showing the actual shooting. As you can see, Halvorsen's voice continued over the clips, officers maintained control of a dangerous situation. We deeply regret any injury to civilians, but our primary duty is to protect our officers and the public. An elderly nurse watching nearby clicked her tongue in disapproval. That's not how I heard it happened at all, she muttered, glancing at Marcus without recognizing him. The press conference continued, each word carefully chosen to construct a false narrative. There was no mention of wrong addresses, no admission of error. The story had been rewritten while Ruth still lay in surgery. A reporter raised her hand. Chief, sources say the warrant may have been for a different address. Can you comment? That's completely incorrect, Halvorsen replied smoothly. The warrant was properly executed at the intended location. However, I can't comment further on an ongoing internal investigation. Marcus recognized the phrase, ongoing internal investigation, bureaucratic language designed to deflect questions and delay accountability. He'd seen similar tactics in military briefings, words used as shields against truth. His coffee had grown cold, untouched. On screen, Halvorsen was wrapping up, promising full transparency, while delivering anything but. The morning sun through the windows cast harsh shadows across the TV screen, making her face appear mask-like and artificial. A young reporter tried one more question. Chief, can you confirm if any weapons were found at the scene? Halvorsen's pause was barely noticeable, but Marcus caught it, a micro-expression of calculation before she answered. That's part of the ongoing investigation. We'll release all relevant details when appropriate. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from an unknown number. This is Tasha Nguyen, Metro Daily Investigative Desk. Don't delete this message. I know what they're hiding. Don't speak to internal affairs. Need to talk securely. He studied the message while on screen. The press conference gave way to commentary. The news anchor's voice became background noise. Chief Halvorsen assuring the public of a thorough internal investigation into this unfortunate incident. Another nurse approached with a clipboard. Mr. Avery? Your wife is out of surgery. The doctor would like to speak with you. Marcus stood, his movements deliberate and controlled. On the TV, they were replaying Halvorsen's statement. A suspect interfered with lawful service of a warrant. The lie played again, echoing in the nearly empty waiting room. Marcus stared at the screen, his expression hardening into something beyond anger. A cold, tactical focus he hadn't felt since his last mission. They had chosen this battlefield, press conferences and public statements, bureaucratic warfare in broad daylight. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Nguyen. I have the unedited body cam footage. They're already scrubbing records. The morning sun had fully risen now, flooding the waiting room with harsh clarity. The elderly couple had awakened, watching the news with concerned expressions. The nurse waited patiently with her clipboard, and Marcus stood perfectly still, watching Chief Halverson's face freeze-framed on the screen, her lie captured in high definition. "All right," he said quietly, almost to himself. "They want a war in daylight." The fluorescent lights of the hospital cafeteria cast harsh shadows across empty tables. At 9 p.m., the large room felt hollow, its daytime bustle replaced by the quiet hum of vending machines and the steady drumming of rain against tall windows. Marcus sat alone at a corner table, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion, watching water stream down the glass in silvery rivers. A woman in a charcoal blazer approached, her laptop bag slung over one shoulder. Tasha Nguyen moved with the careful precision of someone used to watching her back, scanning the room before sliding into the seat across from Marcus. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, professional. "I know you've had a hell of a day." Marcus nodded, his eyes sharp despite his fatigue. "You said you had something I needed to see." Tasha glanced around once more before opening her laptop. The screen's glow illuminated their faces in the dim cafeteria. "My source sent this an hour ago. It's from Officer Calloway's body cam footage. The complete version, not the edited clips they showed on TV." She turned the laptop toward Marcus. The image showed his kitchen counter from the previous night, captured in the harsh beam of tactical flashlights. Everything looked exactly as he remembered, except for one detail that made his blood run cold. A black handgun lay on the counter near where Ruth had been standing. Marcus's hands gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. When he spoke, his voice trembled with controlled fury. "That gun wasn't there. I described every damn inch of that counter on the 911 call. 2 coffee mugs, 1 dish towel, Ruth's medical charts, no weapons. Nothing else." "I know," Tasha said, her dark eyes intense. "I've heard the 911 recording. You were methodical, precise. Like you knew even then that you'd need proof." "Military training," Marcus said distantly, still staring at the image. "Details matter. Evidence matters." He looked up at her. "Where did you get this?" Tasha lowered her voice further. "I have a contact inside the department. They're troubled by what happened last night, and more troubled by what they've learned since." She pulled out a notepad covered in tight handwriting. The gun wasn't planted by police. It was placed there by a private security consultant working with the city's redevelopment project. Rain lashed against the windows harder, as if emphasizing her words. In the distance, thunder rolled. "The city's pushing a major urban renewal plan," Tasha continued. "New stadium, luxury apartments, complete neighborhood redesign. Your street is in the target zone." She flipped through her notes. "The consultant works for a company called Dorn Protective Solutions. They're partnered with the police department on community safety initiatives." Marcus's expression darkened with recognition. "Silas Dorn." Tasha nodded. "You know him?" "Know of him. Former defense contractor. His company provides tactical support to police departments across 3 states. Marcus's voice was bitter. "They train SWAT teams, consult on high-risk operations. Real mercenary stuff dressed up in corporate language." A late-night custodian pushed a mop bucket past their table. They waited until his footsteps faded before continuing. "My source says Dorn's people have been embedded with local police for months," Tasha explained. "They're helping identify problem properties that might resist the redevelopment plan. Your house was never the real target last night, but clearing your block would certainly help their timeline." Marcus stared at the planted gun in the photo, his tactical mind already assembling pieces. They needed a reason to justify the shooting. A weapon would transform Ruth from victim to threat. His voice was deadly quiet. "They tried to murder my wife twice. Once with bullets, once with lies." "The department's already scrubbing records," Tasha warned. "My source says they're rewriting reports, losing radio logs. By morning, They'll have their official story locked down tight. Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the cafeteria in stark white. Marcus's face was set in lines of iron determination. "Then I'll find the proof myself," he said. "Every falsified document, every edited video, every piece of evidence they tried to bury." He met Tasha's gaze. "You said you have the full body cam footage?" She nodded. "And more. Building permits, zoning changes, private emails between Dorn's company and city officials. But we need absolute verification before we can publish. One mistake, and they'll discredit everything." "I'll get you verification," Marcus promised. "These people think they're trained in covering tracks. But they've never dealt with someone who spent 20 years learning how to hunt threats." His voice carried the quiet certainty of a man who had faced worse odds and prevailed. Tasha began packing up her laptop. "Be careful. Dorn's people play dirty, and they have the department's protection." "So did every enemy I ever faced," Marcus replied. "Didn't help them either." They stood. The meeting concluded. Tasha handed him a burner phone. "Secure line. I'll be in touch." Marcus walked through empty corridors back to the ICU, his footsteps echoing in the late-night quiet. Ruth's room was dim, except for the soft glow of monitors. She lay still, breathing steady but shallow, white bandages stark against her skin. He sat beside her bed, taking her hand gently between his. The heart monitor beeped its steady rhythm, proof of her strength, her refusal to give up. "You hold on, baby," he whispered. "I'll make them tell the truth." The monitor beeped again, as if answering. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean for another day of lies and revelations to come. At midnight, Marcus stood before his violated home. The yellow police tape fluttered in the breeze like tattered battle flags. He ducked under it, noting how they hadn't even bothered to secure the splintered door frame. Amateur work. Sloppy. The kind of mistakes that would help him build his case. He moved through the darkness with practiced silence, his black civilian clothes blending with the shadows. 20 years of SEAL operations had taught him how to clear buildings. Now he was using those skills to document the aftermath of violence in his own home. The kitchen first. His tactical flashlight beam swept methodically across the scene. Bloodstains, Ruth's blood, had dried dark on the tile floor. Marcus forced down the surge of anger, channeling it into focus. He photographed everything with his phone. Blood patterns, shell casings they'd missed, impact marks on the walls. "Standard four-man entry team," he muttered, reading the scene like a combat report. 2 through the front, 2 covering the back. Calloway was point man, positioned here. He stood where the shooter had stood, reconstructing the moment. Something white caught his eye beneath the counter. A small evidence tag that had slipped under the baseboard. Marcus crouched, using tweezers from his pocket to carefully extract it. The tag read, "Item number 4, unregistered firearm, black, semi-automatic." "Sloppy work again," he whispered, photographing the tag from multiple angles. "You shouldn't leave your props behind." In the living room, he documented the battering ram damage, the flashbang scorch marks. Every detail was potential evidence. His phone buzzed. A message from Tasha. "Serial number from that planted gun? Run it through this database link. You'll want to see this." Marcus used the secure browser she'd installed, entering the serial number from the evidence tag. The result made his jaw clench. Training Inventory, DPS Tactical Solutions Division. The gun wasn't a confiscated weapon, it was a dummy firearm from Dorn's company's training stock. "Got you," he breathed, saving screenshots. "You didn't even bother using a clean weapon." He moved upstairs, clearing rooms with the same methodical precision he'd used in combat zones. Their bedroom was a chaos of overturned furniture and scattered clothes. On the dresser, Ruth's jewelry box lay open, her treasured hummingbird pin glinting in his flashlight beam. He picked it up gently, remembering how she wore it every Sunday to church. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Tasha. Breaking. Got drone footage of DPS running raid drills 2 blocks over. Last week. Check your email. The video showed tactical teams in black gear, practicing breach and clear operations on empty houses. The timestamp was 3 days before Ruth's shooting. But it was the map overlay that made Marcus's blood run cold. The practice raids formed a perfect corridor, a security perimeter for the proposed stadium development, and his house sat right in the middle of the planned route. We weren't the target, he realized, pieces clicking into place. We were an obstacle. They needed to clear this whole block. He kept working, photographing and logging everything. Boot prints in the carpet, bullet holes in the walls, shell casings in the garden where the backup team had stood. Each piece of evidence was carefully documented and tagged with time, date, and GPS coordinates. In his home office, Marcus found more proof of their sloppiness. They dropped a radio communication log, complete with timestamps that contradicted the official report. He added it to his growing evidence file. The night wore on. Marcus moved room by room, building his case. His SEAL training had taught him that the best intelligence came from patient, methodical collection. Every detail mattered. Every piece of evidence was a weapon in the fight for truth. At 3 a.m., he had what he needed. Sitting at the kitchen table, still stained with Ruth's blood, Marcus compiled everything into an encrypted file. Photographs, measurements, serial numbers, radio logs, drone footage. He added Tasha's documentation of the DPS training operations and the redevelopment plans. He thought of Ruth in her hospital bed, fighting for her life because some corporate security firm decided their home was in the way. The anger rose again, but he channeled it into precision, into careful documentation that would stand up in court. Opening his laptop, Marcus composed a brief email to Jerome Watson, a retired civil rights attorney known for taking on police brutality cases. He attached the evidence file and wrote simply, "They shot my wife. I have proof it was planned. Will you help me make them pay?" The reply came within minutes. "Call me in the morning. Don't talk to anyone else." Marcus sat in the darkness of his violated home, at the table where his family had shared thousands of meals. Ruth's blood was still visible on the floor despite their attempts to clean it. Her coffee mug from the night before sat untouched on the counter. "They picked the wrong door," he whispered into the shadows. "And the wrong man." The evidence was gathered. The truth was documented. Now it was time to make them answer for what they'd done. The old church smelled of fresh coffee and lemon-scented wood polish. Morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows across the worn wooden pews. Marcus sat in the church office, his evidence folder spread across a table that had seen decades of community meetings. Deacon Elijah Brown moved slowly but purposefully, his weathered hands setting down 2 steaming mugs of coffee. At 70, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of someone who'd seen every trick in the system's playbook. "The warrant's clean on the surface," Marcus said, sliding over the paperwork. "But something feels off about the timing." Deacon Brown adjusted his reading glasses, studying the documents. "Sometimes the devil's in the details, son. I've got people who can help us look deeper." He pulled out his phone, fingers moving with surprising speed across the screen. "Give me a minute." Within 30 minutes, 3 people arrived: a retired court clerk, a digital forensics expert, and a civil rights attorney. They gathered around the table, surrounded by the smell of coffee and old hymnals. The forensics expert, a woman with silver-streaked hair, opened her laptop. "Let's look at the metadata first. Every electronic document leaves traces." Marcus watched as she pulled up the warrant PDF. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, digging into layers of digital information most people never saw. "Wait," she said, leaning forward. Look at these timestamps. The group crowded around her screen. The warrant's creation time was listed as 3:21 a.m., 20 minutes after the raid had already begun. That's impossible, Marcus said, his voice tight. They hit our door at 12:03 a.m. I have the 911 call to prove it. The retired clerk adjusted her glasses. The signature certification, it's marked 3:22 a.m., 1 minute after creation. Judge Greer wouldn't sign that fast even if he was sitting at his desk at 3 in the morning. Which he wasn't, the attorney added. I checked his credit card records. He was at the Skyline bar until 2 a.m. Deacon Brown's face darkened. They shot first and papered it up later. Old trick, new technology. Marcus felt his SEAL training kick in, the familiar clarity of identifying a target. We need to talk to the current clerk, the one who processed this warrant. Sarah Martinez, the retired clerk said. She's new, started 6 months ago. Sweet girl, but vulnerable to pressure, Deacon Brown finished. I know where to find her. They located Sarah at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from the courthouse. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark circles under her eyes. When Marcus and Deacon Brown sat down at her table, she immediately started shaking. I know why you're here, she whispered, hands trembling around her coffee cup. I've been sick about it since that night. Marcus kept his voice gentle, non-threatening. We just need the truth, Sarah. What happened? Tears welled in her eyes. Judge Greer called me at home. Said it was an emergency. Said I needed to come in and process some urgent paperwork. She wiped her eyes. When I got there, he had the warrant ready. Told me to backdate it. Said it was already done anyway. Just needed the paperwork caught up. He told you to forge a warrant after they'd already raided my home? Sarah nodded, tears falling freely now. He said it was for everyone's protection. That sometimes the paperwork gets delayed, but it's all legal, really. I didn't know someone had been shot. Marcus pulled out his phone, setting it on the table. Would you be willing to record that statement? She stared at the phone, then at Deacon Brown's kind face. They'll fire me. Child, the deacon said softly, some burdens are heavier than losing a job. Truth is one of them. Sarah squared her shoulders and nodded. Marcus pressed record. Her voice shook, but held steady as she detailed everything. The late-night call, Judge Greer's instructions, the timestamps she'd been told to enter. She named everyone present in the judge's chambers that night, including a representative from Dorn Protective Solutions. When she finished, Marcus saved the recording and immediately created copies. One to his secure email, one to the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, one to Tasha. Thank you, he told Sarah. You did the right thing. Back at the church, Marcus sat alone in a pew, composing a voice memo to himself. 3:21 a.m., warrant forged post-action. Judge Greer coordinated with Clerk Sarah Martinez to backdate authorization. Dorn representative present during fabrication of documents. He looked up at the stained glass windows, remembering how Ruth loved the way they painted the air with color on Sunday mornings. His phone buzzed, a text from Imani at the hospital. Ruth's vital signs had improved slightly. She was fighting. Thunder rolled outside, promising a storm. Marcus sent the final copies of his evidence and Sarah's confession. Let them try to bury this now. The truth was out there, backed up in multiple places, protected by people who wouldn't back down. Deacon Brown's voice echoed from the office. Marcus, we've got more files to go through if you're ready. Marcus stood, straightening his shoulders. One piece of evidence at a time, they would build their case. The storm was coming, but this time, they'd be ready for it. Sunlight streamed through the hospital blinds, painting thin stripes across Ruth's white sheets. Marcus sat in the same chair he'd barely left for a week, his hand wrapped gently around hers. The steady beeping of monitors had become a familiar rhythm, marking time in this sterile room that smelled of antiseptic and wilting flowers. When Ruth's fingers twitched in his grasp, Marcus almost missed it. Then her eyes fluttered open. Those same warm brown eyes he'd fallen in love with 24 years ago. His heart stopped. "Ruth," he whispered, leaning forward. "Baby, I'm here." She blinked slowly, orienting herself. The breathing tube was still in place, preventing her from speaking, but her eyes fixed on Marcus with perfect clarity. Her free hand moved weakly, gesturing. Marcus grabbed the small whiteboard and marker the nurses had left for this moment. Ruth's hand trembled as she took the marker, but her nursing experience showed in her deliberate movements. Her writing was shaky but legible. Did they say, "Sorry"? Marcus felt rage surge in his chest, hot and familiar. He'd been holding it back for 7 days, channeling it into action instead of anger. But seeing Ruth's first thought be about their accountability, it made him want to tear down the whole department with his bare hands. He swallowed hard, keeping his voice steady. "Not yet, but they will." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. She wrote again. "Our home? We're staying with Deacon Brown for now," Marcus said softly. "The community's rallied around us. Everyone's helping." A light tap at the door interrupted them. Tasha stood there, holding her ever-present notebook and a fresh cup of coffee. Her face lit up seeing Ruth awake. "Mrs. Avery," she said warmly, approaching the bed. "It's so good to see you alert. I'm Tasha Nguyen. I've been helping Marcus gather evidence." Ruth wrote carefully. "Thank you." Tasha pulled up another chair, her expression turning serious. "Marcus, I've got news. My contact at the Justice Department says they're watching this case closely. If we can build enough public pressure, they'll launch a full civil rights investigation." Ruth's hand moved across the whiteboard again. "Tell everyone. Truth matters." Marcus squeezed her hand. "That's exactly what we're going to do." He turned to Tasha. "I want to organize a march. Not angry, not violent, just truth. Witnesses walking in daylight. I can help coordinate media coverage," Tasha said, already making notes. "When?" 7 days, Marcus replied. 1 week from the night they shot my wife in our kitchen. We'll walk from the church to City Hall." Ruth wrote again. "Nurses will come." "Yes, they will," Marcus agreed. "And veterans, and teachers, and elders. Everyone who's tired of seeing truth get buried." The door opened again. Imani rushed in, her laptop under one arm. She stopped short, seeing her mother awake, tears springing to her eyes. "Mama!" She hurried to the bedside, carefully hugging Ruth around the tubes and wires. Ruth's face lit up at their daughter's presence. She wrote, "My beautiful girl." Imani wiped her eyes, then opened her laptop. "I've been working on something. A way to keep this story in people's minds." She turned the screen to show them a simple but powerful website design. The header read, "Days since the truth was shot." The page featured a stark counter. 7 days. Below it, a timeline documented every lie, every piece of evidence, every step toward justice. Clean, factual, undeniable. "We need to put faces to this story," Imani continued. "Dad, I want you to record daily updates, short videos, just telling the truth about what happened and what we're finding. No anger, just facts. Let people see who we really are." Marcus nodded slowly. They expected us to be angry, to fight back violently, to fit their narrative. He looked at Ruth. "We'll show them something different." Ruth wrote, "Dignity is power." Over the next week, Marcus recorded his updates from Ruth's hospital room. He spoke directly to the camera, his voice calm and measured. Day 4. We discovered the warrant was forged after the raid. Day 5. Private security contractors were involved in planning this operation. Day 6. Judge Greer signed backdated documents at 3:21 a.m. The videos spread. Imani's website counter kept ticking up. Tasha's articles dug deeper into the corruption. The truth refused to stay buried. On the 7th day, they gathered at Deacon Brown's church. Hundreds of people stood in neat rows, nurses in scrubs, veterans in service caps, elderly church ladies in their Sunday best. Many carried small LED candles, though it was morning. No signs, no shouts, no anger. Just silent witnesses to truth. Marcus helped Ruth's nurse colleagues push her wheelchair to the front of the crowd. She was still weak, but insisted on being present. Someone had pinned her silver hummingbird brooch to her hospital gown. Deacon Brown's voice carried across the assembled crowd. We walk in dignity. We walk in truth. We walk in light. The march began, footsteps echoing on pavement. News cameras followed as the silent procession moved through downtown. Store owners stepped outside. Office workers pressed against windows. Police officers stood awkwardly at intersections, unsure how to respond to this quiet display of power. Marcus walked beside Ruth's wheelchair, one hand on her shoulder. Above them, news helicopters circled, broadcasting the scene across the nation. Hundreds of citizens walking in silent witness, led by a decorated SEAL commander and his injured wife, asking one simple question: when would the truth be honored? 2 days after the march, Marcus stood in City Hall's marble lobby, straightening his tie. The building's classical columns and polished floors spoke of power and permanence, but Marcus knew better. Everything human-built could be dismantled, given enough truth and time. Through the glass doors, camera flashes created a constant strobe effect. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the overcast sky like metal flowers. The march had forced them to pay attention. Now they couldn't look away. District Attorney Colin Bristow descended the main staircase, each step measured and camera-ready. His charcoal suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his silver hair was expertly styled to project authority without aggression. A politician's uniform. "Commander Avery," Bristow called out, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. Shall we speak in my office?" Marcus shook the offered hand firmly but briefly. "Let's keep it professional, Mr. Bristow." The DA's office matched its occupant. Expensive wood paneling, carefully chosen art, law degrees in gilded frames. Bristow gestured to a leather chair, then settled behind his massive desk. "I want you to know," Bristow began, folding his hands, "that I take these allegations very seriously. What happened to your wife was tragic, and—" "Save the script," Marcus interrupted quietly. "You've had 8 days to take this seriously. Instead, you've helped bury evidence." Bristow's practiced smile flickered. "That's quite an accusation, Commander. I hope you understand the importance of handling sensitive investigations through proper channels." "Proper channels?" Marcus leaned forward. "Like falsifying warrant timestamps? Like planting evidence? Like editing body cam footage? These are complex situations that require careful—" "No." Marcus's voice remained level, but it filled the room. "This is very simple. Your office is helping cover up an attempted murder because it involves Silas Dorn's money and the chief's ambitions." Bristow's friendly mask slipped further. "Commander, I strongly suggest you stop making these public accusations. They could be considered inflammatory. The truth often is." "Think about your family," Bristow pressed. "Your wife needs peace to recover. Your daughter's career is just beginning. Why damage their futures with all this spectacle?" Marcus stood slowly, towering over the desk. "Are you threatening my family, Mr. Bristow?" "Of course not." The DA raised his hands defensively. I'm trying to help you understand the delicacy of... There's nothing delicate about what happened in my kitchen. Nothing delicate about forged documents or planted guns. And nothing delicate about what happens next. Marcus turned and walked to the door. Behind him, Bristow's voice hardened. Commander Avery, if you continue releasing privileged information, there will be consequences. Marcus paused in the doorway. There already are consequences. You're just not used to them applying to you. He walked out past the cameras, ignoring their questions. His phone buzzed. Tasha's number. Marcus, her voice was urgent. They're moving against you. The DA just filed obstruction charges, claiming you delayed medical treatment during the raid. They're calling it interference with emergency services. Marcus kept walking, his stride steady. They're desperate. It gets worse. Someone leaked your old SEAL reprimand, the one about excessive force in that hostage rescue. They're spinning it as a pattern of instability. A bitter laugh escaped him. That reprimand came because I refused to leave a civilian behind during an evacuation. Guess they left that part out. What do you want to do? Marcus checked his watch. Meet me at the courthouse in 1 hour. Bring cameras. The sun was setting when Marcus arrived at the courthouse steps. The news crews were already there, along with dozens of community members holding candles. Deacon Brown stood at the front, his weathered face serene. Marcus approached slowly, hands visible at his sides. Police officers shifted nervously, hands on their weapons. Marcus Avery, an officer called out. We have a warrant for your arrest. Marcus stopped at the bottom of the steps. The candles cast dancing shadows across the stone facade. Camera lights created a wall of artificial day. I know, he said clearly, his voice carrying. That's why I'm here. He raised his hands slowly above his head, turning in a full circle so every camera could capture the moment. I'm not resisting, he announced. I'm reminding you what resisting looks like. The officers approached cautiously, as if expecting a trap. Marcus kept his hands raised, his posture straight and proud. As they cuffed him, he locked eyes with each camera lens in turn. 8 days ago, these same officers shot my wife in our kitchen. They planted evidence. They forged documents. They tried to bury the truth. The handcuffs clicked shut. But truth doesn't stay buried. They led him up the courthouse steps. The crowd of witnesses parted silently, their candles holding back the growing dark. Not a single person shouted or moved to interfere. They simply watched, bearing witness. At the top of the steps, Marcus turned one last time to face the cameras. The cuffs gleamed in the artificial light, but there was no shame in his expression, only quiet certainty. The heavy courthouse doors swung open, and Marcus walked through them with the same dignified bearing he'd shown in combat, in crisis, in every moment since the raid. He was a warrior, but his battlefield was truth. And this arrest wasn't a surrender. It was another step toward victory. Across town, in her dorm room, Imani opened her laptop and began downloading the 911 call audio. Her fingers flew across the keys, determination etched in every line of her face. The night was just beginning. Imani's dorm room glowed with the blue light of multiple screens. Her main monitor displayed video editing software, while her laptop showed the growing social media response to her father's arrest. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, but her focus never wavered. "Okay, Dad," she whispered, dragging the 911 audio file into position. "Let's show them what really happened." The recording was crystal clear, her father's voice steady and controlled, as chaos erupted around him. She synchronized it perfectly with the body cam footage, creating a split-screen view. On the left, the timestamp and audio waveform. On the right, Officer Calloway's perspective. "Kitchen counter contents," Marcus's voice recited in the recording. 2 coffee mugs, 1 blue, 1 white, 1 dish towel, checkered pattern, one wooden cutting board, one fruit bowl with 3 apples. Imani added text overlays, highlighting each item as her father named it. Then came the critical moment. The body cam showed Calloway turning away for exactly 4.2 seconds. When the camera returned to the counter, a black handgun had appeared. She zoomed in on that sequence, slowed it down, added frame numbers. The evidence was undeniable. The gun materialized between frame 2341 and 2342. "Got you," Imani muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she added the final touches. Property records showing the gun's training inventory number, the timestamp metadata from the forged warrant, and finally, a simple title. What Really Happened: The Avery House Raid. At 11:47 p.m., she hit upload. Within minutes, the view counter started climbing. 100 views, 1,000 views, 10,000 views. By midnight, her phone was buzzing constantly with notifications. Local activists shared it first, then national civil rights accounts. News organizations began requesting permission to broadcast it. Imani opened her social media dashboard, watching the analytics explode. The video was being shared in every state, translated into multiple languages, analyzed frame by independent investigators. 50,000 views, 100,000 views, 500,000 views. Her roommate Jenny burst in around 1 a.m. "Imani, you're trending everywhere, and Avery's counter is the top hashtag." Imani barely looked up from her screens. "Good. Help me track the responses. We need to document everything before they try to take it down." But no takedown came. The truth was moving too fast, spreading too wide. By 2 a.m., major news networks were running segments about the video. Legal experts dissected the evidence. Former law enforcement officials confirmed the irregularities. 1 million views, 2 million views, 3 million views. Dawn was breaking when Tasha called. "Imani, you've done it. The video cracked everything wide open. And I've got something to add. Phone records." Imani sat up straighter. "What kind of phone records?" "The kind that show District Attorney Bristow called Silas Dorn 12 times the night of the raid. First call at 11:42 p.m., 20 minutes before they hit your house. Last call at 3:19 a.m., 2 minutes before the warrant was falsified." "Send them to me," Imani said, already clearing space on her second monitor. "I'll create an infographic." The phone records appeared in her inbox moments later. Imani overlaid them with a timeline of the raid, creating a damning visualization of coordination and cover-up. By mid-morning, the video had over 5 million views. Justice for Avery's was trending globally. The family's legal defense fund had received over $200,000 in donations from supporters worldwide. Local news crews stationed themselves outside the police headquarters, the courthouse, and the DA's office. But the most dramatic scene unfolded in the City Hall parking garage. Chief Halverson's black SUV pulled in around 9 a.m. As soon as she stepped out, reporters swarmed her from every direction, microphones thrust forward like accusing fingers. "Chief Halverson, did you know about the planted evidence? Was this coordinated with Dorn Protective Solutions? Why was the warrant falsified? Are you planning to resign?" Halverson's carefully maintained composure cracked. Her face flushed red as she tried to push through the crowd. "No comment!" she shouted, her voice shrill with panic. "I said no comment!" She practically ran to the elevator, but the cameras caught every second of her retreat. When the doors wouldn't close fast enough, she slammed her hand against the button repeatedly, her professional mask completely shattered. In his hospital room, Marcus watched the footage on his phone, Ruth sleeping peacefully beside him. His expression remained calm, but his eyes held a fierce satisfaction. "Truth doesn't need permission," he murmured, reaching over to adjust Ruth's blanket. On the bedside table, Ruth's hummingbird pin caught the morning light, casting tiny rainbows across the white hospital walls. The same light illuminated the growing crowd of supporters gathering outside, their signs and cameras raised toward the truth, like flowers turning toward the sun. Across town, Imani finally allowed herself to lean back in her chair, exhausted but triumphant. Her screen still flickered with activity, new shares, new comments, new allies joining the fight. The video's view count had passed 6 million and showed no signs of slowing down. The truth was unstoppable now, moving through the world at the speed of light, dismantling lies with every click and share. No amount of political power or corporate money could hold it back. The dam had broken, and justice was flooding in. The church basement smelled of old hymnals and coffee. Marcus sat in the shadows, watching Officer Miguel Alvarez pace between the folding chairs. The young officer's hands trembled as he checked his phone for the 5th time. "They'll know I came here," Alvarez said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Union watches everything." Marcus remained still, his posture relaxed but alert. "Sit down, Miguel. You're making me dizzy." Alvarez collapsed into a metal chair, the legs scraping against concrete. "I should have spoken up that night. When they held back the medics." His voice cracked. "I heard everything on the radio." "What radio?" Marcus leaned forward slightly. "The dispatch logs show silence during those 12 minutes. Alvarez glanced at the basement door, then pulled out his department-issued radio. His fingers moved across the keypad in a precise sequence. A different frequency crackled to life, one that shouldn't exist. "Channel 7 Echo," Alvarez explained. "Encrypted. No logs, no records. They use it for sensitive operations." Marcus's expression remained neutral, but his eyes narrowed. "Show me." Alvarez demonstrated the sequence again, slower this time. "It's not in any manual. They teach it during special team briefings. That night when your wife was down?" He swallowed hard. "Chief Halverson came on personally. Ordered us to secure the scene before letting medics in. Said we needed time to clarify the narrative." 12 minutes, Marcus said softly. "They let Ruth bleed for 12 minutes while they planted evidence." Alvarez nodded, shame written across his face. "I can prove it. I've been recording the channel since that night. Yesterday, Lieutenant Hayes was talking about the body cams. Said, 'Brass wants cameras off until the story's clean.'" He pulled out a small digital recorder. "It's all here." Marcus studied the young officer. "Why now, Miguel?" "Because I became a cop to help people," Alvarez said, his voice stronger. "Not to watch them die for property developers. My father was a beat cop for 30 years. He taught me that the badge means protecting people, not power." He set the recorder on the table between them. "I'll wear a wire. Get you more proof." Marcus picked up the recorder, his movements deliberate. "They'll destroy you for this." "They're already destroying themselves," Alvarez replied. "At least this way, I can look my father in the eye again." Over the next hour, they planned the operation. Alvarez would wear a concealed microphone during the next command staff meeting. Marcus gave him a secure phone and showed him how to encrypt the transmissions. "If anything feels wrong," Marcus instructed, "you say the word coffee in any sentence. I'll have extract teams ready." Alvarez nodded, memorizing the protocols. His hands had stopped shaking. The next morning, Alvarez walked into headquarters wearing the wire. Marcus monitored from a van 3 blocks away, recording every word. For 2 hours, nothing significant happened. Then Chief Halverson called an emergency meeting. "The Avery situation is contained." Her voice came through clearly. "D.A. Bristow has the warrant situation handled. Judge Greer is on board." "What about the gun discrepancy?" someone asked. "Property records have been adjusted." Another voice, Lieutenant Hayes. "Inventory numbers won't match the original logs anymore." Marcus's jaw tightened as he listened. Every word was another nail in their coffin. Alvarez spoke up, his voice steady. "And the radio traffic from that night?" "What radio traffic?" Halverson snapped. "Channel 7 Echo is clean. Always has been." The meeting continued, each minute bringing more damning evidence. But just as Alvarez was preparing to leave, a new voice cut through the transmission. "Chief, we have a problem. IT flagged unauthorized access to the encrypted channels." The audio erupted with movement. "Lock down the building," Halverson ordered. "Nobody leaves until we find the leak." "Coffee sounds good right now," Alvarez said clearly into the mic. "I need some coffee." Marcus was already moving, but it was too late. The transmission cut off abruptly. An hour later, breaking news alerts lit up Marcus's phone. The footage showed Alvarez being led out of the police station in handcuffs, accused of stealing sensitive department data. Chief Halverson stood at a podium, painting him as a traitor who had compromised officer safety. Marcus watched from Ruth's hospital room, his hand clenched around her small hummingbird pin. The metal wings dug into his palm as Halverson continued her character assassination. "Officer Alvarez betrayed his oath," she declared. "He compromised ongoing investigations and put his fellow officers at risk. This department has zero tolerance for such violations." The camera panned to Alvarez in the back of a patrol car. His face was bruised, but his expression remained defiant. He looked directly into the lens, and for a moment, Marcus saw his father's pride reflected there. Ruth stirred in her hospital bed. "They hurt him," she whispered, her voice still weak. "Because he told the truth." Marcus gently placed the hummingbird pin back on her nightstand. "Yes, but his truth is safe with us now, and they can't take that back." Outside, reporters clamored for statements. Inside, machines beeped steadily, marking time like a metronome. Marcus sat in the gathering darkness, the recorded evidence from Alvarez secure in multiple locations, waiting for the right moment to strike back against those who thought they could bury the truth along with their badges. The orange flames reached toward the night sky, consuming the Avery home with frightening speed. Marcus stood barefoot on his front lawn, the grass cool and damp between his toes. The fire's glow painted his face in shifting shadows as he watched 30 years of memories turn to ash. Firefighters swarmed the property, their shouts mixing with the crackle of burning wood and the howl of sirens. The water pressure from their hoses seemed weak, barely reaching the second floor, where Ruth's home office used to be. "Mr. Avery?" A firefighter approached, his face streaked with soot. He held something small and metallic in his gloved hand. "You need to see this." Marcus took the object, immediately recognizing the weight and shape. A police union challenge coin, its edges blackened. The firefighter pointed toward the street. "Found it jammed in the hydrant cap. Had to waste precious minutes getting it loose." He shook his head. "Never seen anything like it. Someone wanted this fire to burn hot and long." Marcus turned the coin over in his palm, feeling the raised lettering, "Brotherhood above all." The irony wasn't lost on him. He pocketed the coin just as tires screeched on the street behind him. "Dad!" Imani's voice cut through the chaos. She sprinted across the lawn, Ruth following more slowly, supported by a nurse from the hospital. Marcus caught his daughter in a tight embrace, feeling her shoulders shake with silent sobs. "The photos," Imani whispered. "All our pictures." "We're alive," Marcus said firmly, reaching out to pull Ruth into their embrace. "Everything else is just things." Ruth's hospital gown was visible under her hastily donned coat. She shouldn't have left the hospital, but Marcus understood why she had to come. This was their home, where they'd raised their daughter, where they'd built their life. Now it was being consumed by flames born of hatred and fear. "Your mother's quilts," Ruth said softly, watching as the roof began to cave in. "All those stories. Gone." Marcus held them both closer, his military training warring with his human heart. He wanted to rage, to hunt down every officer who had a hand in this. Instead, he remained still, anchoring his family as their world burned. Deacon Elijah Brown's ancient Buick pulled up to the curb. The old man emerged slowly, his face grave in the firelight. He made his way across the lawn, stopping beside the family. "The Lord tests the righteous," he said, his deep voice carrying over the sound of splintering wood. "But don't forget, he also hates the wicked." Marcus nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. This wasn't just destruction. It was desperation. They were running, scared. "You've been fighting the evidence war," Deacon Brown continued, watching as another section of roof collapsed. "Collecting proof, building your case. But evidence alone won't change hearts." "What are you suggesting?" Marcus asked, though he already knew. "It's time for the truth war," Brown replied. "Public, undeniable. Make them face what they've done in the light of day." Imani pulled back from her father's embrace, wiping her eyes. "A public forum? Like the civil rights tribunals in the 60s? "The people's deposition," Marcus said, the idea taking shape. "Every official, every officer, every suit who had a hand in this, we invite them all. Press, citizens, everyone." Ruth squeezed his hand. "They won't come." "They will," Marcus said, his voice hardening. "Because if they don't, their absence will speak louder than any testimony." The fire was dying now, more smoke than flame. The firefighters moved methodically, ensuring no hot spots remained. Marcus watched as pieces of their life floated down in the spray. Fragments of photos, bits of books, ashes of memories. "The old city auditorium," Deacon Brown suggested. "It's neutral ground, big enough for crowds. Good acoustics." "I'll handle social media," Imani said, already pulling out her phone. "We can live stream it, have people submit questions in real time." Marcus looked at Ruth, seeking her approval. She nodded slowly. "Make them see us," she said. "All of us they've hurt." The rest of the night passed in a blur of insurance forms and police reports. Marcus insisted on filing one, watching the responding officers squirm as they documented the Union coin. By dawn, the fire was out, leaving only a skeletal frame where their home had stood. Marcus drove Ruth back to the hospital, making sure she was comfortable before heading to the Old City Auditorium. The building stood like a granite sentinel in the early morning light, its columns casting long shadows across the steps. Inside, the air smelled of dust and history. Marcus began setting up chairs himself, arranging them in a semicircle facing the stage. Each scrape of metal on wood echoed through the empty space. He positioned a single chair in the center, facing the others, the seat of truth. Row by row, he continued his work as sunrise painted the high windows in gold. The task was methodical, almost meditative. Each chair represented a voice that would be heard, a truth that would be told. He thought of Ruth's quilts, how she had stitched stories into every square. This would be their new story, not written in fabric, but in justice. The sound of his footsteps echoed as he walked the aisles, checking sightlines and spacing. The old building seemed to wake up around him, creaking and settling as if preparing itself for what was to come. Through the doors, he could hear the city coming to life. Traffic growing, voices rising, another day beginning. The Old City Auditorium filled steadily as morning turned to afternoon. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long beams across wooden floors that had seen generations of civic gatherings. The space hummed with quiet determination as community members took their seats. Elderly church ladies in their Sunday best, off-duty nurses still wearing their scrubs, veterans with ramrod-straight postures, and families clutching handmade signs. Imani moved purposefully through the aisles, checking connections on the array of tablets and laptops she'd set up for the live stream. Her fingers flew across keyboards, confirming bandwidth and testing camera angles. She'd positioned devices strategically throughout the room, ensuring every testimony would be captured from multiple perspectives. "We're trending already," she called out to Marcus, who stood near the podium reviewing his notes. 3,000 watching the pre-stream, and it's climbing fast. Tasha Nguyen directed her crew with precise gestures, positioning cameras like chess pieces. "Main feed here," she instructed, pointing to the center aisle. "Second unit on the gallery reactions. Third unit, stay mobile. I want to catch every expression when the evidence drops." Her voice carried the steady authority of someone who'd covered enough civic meetings to know when history was about to be made. Marcus adjusted his tie, the same one he'd worn to Ruth's father's funeral. His calm demeanor masked the warrior's alertness that tracked every movement in the room. He noticed the small details, the way the veterans naturally positioned themselves near exits, how the nurses clustered protectively around elderly attendees, the reporters testing their equipment with practiced efficiency. At precisely 2 p.m., Marcus stepped to the podium. The room fell silent save for the soft whir of camera motors and the rustle of notepads. His voice, when it came, filled the space with quiet authority. "Welcome to the People's Deposition," he began, his words measured and clear. "We are here today because truth doesn't require permission to be spoken. It only requires courage to be heard." Behind him, a large screen displayed a timeline of the raid, meticulously constructed from body cam footage, 911 recordings, and official documents. Each piece of evidence was time-stamped, sourced, and verified. At 12:03 a.m. 8 days ago, officers broke down our door without warning, Marcus continued, clicking through images that showed the splintered entrance. At 12:04 a.m., my wife Ruth Avery, a registered nurse who has served this community for 20 years, was shot while raising her empty hands. The timeline advanced methodically. Marcus's presentation wasn't emotional, it was surgical. He displayed warrant documents with their metadata exposed, showing the timestamp alterations. He played radio transmissions, synchronized with body cam footage, revealing the contradictions in official accounts. From the back of the room, a man in a pressed suit slipped in quietly, taking a seat in the last row. Though he didn't introduce himself, several reporters recognized him as the Department of Justice's regional investigator. He pulled out a small notebook and began taking detailed notes. "This evidence shows 3 distinct violations of department policy," Marcus explained, highlighting sections of the police manual on screen. "But more importantly, it shows a pattern of coordinated deception that began the moment my wife's blood hit our kitchen floor." The audience remained silent, but the tension in the room was palpable. Every new piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow against the wall of official denial. Marcus played the full 911 call, his calm voice from that night listing every item on the counter, proving the planted weapon's late appearance. Imani moved between her stations, monitoring the growing online audience. She leaned close to Marcus during a pause, whispering, "Over 50,000 watching now. Comments are flooding in from across the country." Tasha's mobile camera operator caught sight of something through the window. Police cruisers pulling up outside. The whispers started at the back of the room and rippled forward. Someone had heard that Chief Halverson was on her way, that Officer Calloway was gathering supporters to shut down the meeting. Marcus continued steadily, unmoved by the growing murmurs. He clicked to the next slide, financial records showing payments between Dorn Protective Solutions and the Police Foundation, each one dated just before a major raid. These documents demonstrate a pattern of coordination between private security interests and public law enforcement, he explained. Each operation followed the same template: sudden raids, contested property, and residents who stood in the way of development plans. The tension in the room ratcheted higher as shadows passed across the frosted glass of the entrance doors. The veterans in the crowd subtly shifted positions, moving closer to the aisles. Nurses helped elderly attendees to more protected seats away from the entrance. Tasha's cameras swiveled to cover both the podium and the doors, ready to capture whatever came next. The DOJ investigator sat forward slightly, his pen poised above his notebook. Marcus's voice remained steady as he concluded his current point about the pattern of raids. He was just beginning to address the falsified warrant timestamps when the heavy wooden doors at the rear of the auditorium swung open with deliberate force. To continue, write about the officers entering and Marcus's immediate reaction, maintaining the tense atmosphere and detailed observations. The heavy auditorium doors banged against the walls as Chief Halvorson strode in, her face twisted with barely contained rage. Officer Calloway flanked her, along with two other uniformed officers. Their boots echoed against the wooden floor as they marched down the center aisle. "This unauthorized broadcast ends now!" Halvorson's voice cracked with authority. "You have no permit for this gathering." The cameras swiveled, capturing every moment. Tasha's mobile crew positioned themselves strategically, ensuring multiple angles of what was unfolding. Phones throughout the audience lifted to record, creating a forest of glowing screens. Marcus stood calmly at the podium, one hand resting on the edge. "This is a public building during designated hours. We have every right to be here." Calloway's face reddened as he shouldered past an elderly woman in a floral dress, sending her stumbling into her seat. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. The woman's husband, a Korean War veteran with a weathered face, started to rise, but Marcus's voice cut through the tension. "Stay seated, sir. Let them show who they really are." Halvorson reached the front row, her heels clicking against the hardwood. "You're interfering with an ongoing investigation. Shut down those cameras immediately." Instead of complying, Tasha's crew zoomed in tighter. The live stream counter on Imani's laptop showed over 70,000 viewers now watching. Calloway moved with aggressive purpose toward the stage, his hand dropping to his holster. The motion was subtle, but Marcus caught it instantly. The slight shift in weight, the tension in the shoulder that telegraphed intent. Everything slowed down for Marcus. His SEAL training kicked in, muscle memory from countless operations flooding back. He cataloged threats and positions with clinical precision. Calloway, primary threat, 8 feet left. Second officer, baton drawn, 12 feet right, 2 more by the doors. Multiple civilians in the potential line of fire. Calloway's hand wrapped around his gun grip. Marcus moved. He flowed like water, stepping sideways off the podium as Calloway drew. Before the weapon cleared leather, Marcus had closed the distance. His left hand shot out, catching Calloway's wrist and twisting it at precisely the right angle. The crack of breaking bone cut through the gasps of the crowd. The gun clattered to the floor as Calloway howled. The second officer rushed in, baton raised high. Marcus read the telegraphed strike, ducking under the wild swing. He hooked his foot behind the officer's ankle while simultaneously driving his shoulder forward. The combination sent the man sprawling hard onto his back, air rushing from his lungs. Marcus's knee pinned the officer's chest before he could recover, applying just enough pressure to immobilize without injuring. "Stay down," Marcus advised quietly. "You're on camera." Calloway had staggered back, face contorted with pain and rage. His left hand fumbled at his belt, pulling a tactical knife. Steel glinted in the afternoon light streaming through the windows. "I'll kill you!" he snarled, slashing wildly. Marcus moved with the economic precision of someone who had trained for decades. He deflected the knife with his forearm, stepping inside Calloway's guard. The shoulder check that followed was perfectly placed. driving Calloway backward into the podium with bone-jarring force. As Calloway stumbled, Marcus grabbed the microphone cord, wrapping it around the officer's arm with practiced efficiency. One smooth motion rolled Calloway forward, the cord tightening around his bicep. Marcus's arm snaked around Calloway's neck, applying precise pressure to the carotid artery. The knife dropped from nerveless fingers. Marcus held the chokehold just long enough to feel the fight drain out of Calloway's body. He released the pressure before unconsciousness could take hold, letting the officer collapse to his knees, gasping desperately for air. The entire sequence had taken less than 10 seconds. Marcus stood over Calloway, his breathing steady and controlled. Blood trickled from where the knife had nicked his forearm, but his voice remained calm as he looked down at the man who had shot his wife. "That's mercy," he said quietly. "The kind you never gave her." The auditorium was absolutely silent except for Calloway's ragged breathing and the soft whir of camera motors. Every lens in the room was trained on the scene. Marcus standing straight and composed, hands speckled with his own blood, while Calloway knelt before him, the microphone cord still wrapped around his arm like a symbol of his public humiliation. Chief Halverson stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and fury. The two officers by the door had drawn their weapons but held their distance, unwilling to risk shooting into a crowd of civilians with dozens of cameras recording. The elderly woman Calloway had shoved now stood proudly, her phone held high to capture every moment. The Korean War veteran beside her nodded slowly, approval clear in his weathered features. Tasha's main camera pushed in close, capturing Marcus's expression. Not anger, not triumph, just the steady resolve of a man who had done what needed to be done. Blood dripped slowly from Marcus's knuckles onto the wooden stage, each drop echoing in the profound silence. The afternoon sun streaming through the windows cast his shadow long across the floor, stretching toward the very doors that had been broken down at his home just 8 days before. The heavy doors at the back of the auditorium burst open again. "Federal agents! Everyone stay where you are!" Multiple agents in dark jackets with DOJ emblazoned across their backs streamed into the room, weapons drawn but pointed down. The crowd parted silently, creating a wide aisle. The lead agent, a tall woman with close-cropped gray hair, approached the stage with purposeful strides. Two agents flanked Chief Halverson, while others moved to secure Calloway and the other officers. Marcus remained perfectly still, hands visible at his sides. "Agent Cooper," he said, recognizing the DOJ lead from previous correspondence. "I believe this is what you've been waiting for." He reached slowly into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small flash drive. "Everything's here. Warrant forgeries, falsified timestamps, the private security contract with Dorn Solutions, radio logs ordering medical delays, body cam tampering, all of it." He held it out. "Plus, about 70,000 live witnesses." Agent Cooper took the drive, her expression hard as granite. She spoke into her radio. "Control, this is Cooper. Evidence in hand. Execute all pending warrants." The room crackled with tension as more agents entered, accompanied by U.S. Marshals. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing exits and positions throughout the auditorium. "Chief Renee Halverson," Cooper's voice carried clearly through the hushed space. "You are under arrest for conspiracy against rights, obstruction of justice, and violation of oath of office under color of law." Halverson's face drained of color. "This is ridiculous! I demand to speak to—" "You have the right to remain silent," the agent continued, as another officer began handcuffing the chief. "I suggest you exercise that right." DA Colin Bristow tried to slip toward the exit, but found his path blocked by two marshals. "Colin Bristow, you are under arrest for conspiracy against rights and obstruction of justice." The side door opened, and more agents led in a struggling Silas Dorn in handcuffs, His expensive suit was wrinkled, his usual polished demeanor shattered. "This is an outrage! Do you know who I am?" "A private security contractor who conspired with law enforcement to violate constitutional rights," Cooper replied coldly. "Among other charges we'll be adding." Judge Greer was led in next, his robes gone, looking small and old in a rumpled dress shirt. He didn't resist as agents cuffed him. Officer Calloway, still on his knees, was hauled to his feet and formally arrested. The microphone cord fell away from his arm like a shed snake skin. Deacon Brown stood slowly, his voice carrying through the sudden silence. "Brothers and sisters, let us remind them of the law they swore to uphold." He pulled a small copy of the Constitution from his pocket. Other elders throughout the crowd did the same, creating a corridor of voices as the arrested officials were led out. "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice." The words echoed from dozens of throats as Halverson was led past, her head bowed. "Ensure domestic tranquility. Provide for the common defense." Bristow walked through next, unable to meet the eyes of his former constituents. "Promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty." Dorn tried to turn away from the cameras, but there was nowhere to hide. "To ourselves and our posterity." Judge Greer shuffled through, aged decades in moments. "Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." Calloway was the last, his broken wrist secured in cuffs, forced to walk the gauntlet of truth. Tasha's cameras captured every moment. Imani's live stream counter showed over 200,000 viewers now. Phones recorded from every angle as justice materialized in real time. The crowd began to react as the reality sank in. Several elderly women dabbed at tears. Veterans stood at attention, backs straight with pride. Young activists hugged each other, some sobbing with relief. Ruth appeared at the back of the auditorium, supported by a nurse from her hospital floor. She wore a hospital gown under a robe. An IV pole rolled beside her. The crowd parted again, making way as she walked slowly toward the stage. Marcus jumped down to meet her, gently lifting her up the stairs despite her weak protests. Imani rushed to join them, wrapping her arms around both parents. The family stood together on the stage where minutes before, violence had erupted. Now peace settled over them like a warm blanket. Ruth touched Marcus's bloodied knuckles gently with her good hand. "They kicked in our door," Marcus whispered, holding his wife and daughter close. "We opened theirs." The afternoon sun streamed through the high windows, casting long rays across the historic auditorium. They illuminated the empty podium, the scattered chairs, the discarded microphone cord, and the small family standing in its light, finally whole again. Agent Cooper spoke quietly into her radio. "Control. Suspects secured. Justice served." The words echoed slightly in the old building, a final punctuation to 8 days that had started with a splintered door in the night and ended with truth breaking through every barrier they'd tried to build around it. 6 months later, the morning sun painted warm streaks across the freshly painted walls of the Ruth Avery Community Care Center. Where charred remains once marked tragedy, a new 2-story building stood proud, its modern design softened by community touches, flower boxes, comfort benches, and a soaring hummingbird mural that wrapped around the corner. Marcus stood on the front steps, adjusting his tie. The crowd gathering for the opening ceremony reflected the neighborhood's heart. Elderly church members in their Sunday best, veterans wearing service pins, nurses from Ruth's old hospital, and families pushing strollers or helping grandparents find seats. Tasha Nguyen moved through the crowd with her camera crew, capturing the moment for her documentary. She paused to interview an elderly woman who'd been at the people's deposition. "That day changed everything," the woman said, clutching her purse. "Showed us what real courage looks like." Ruth emerged from the center's main entrance, leaning slightly on a cane but standing tall. Her navy dress matched the building's trim, and on her collar, the restored hummingbird pin caught the morning light. The crowd's chatter softened as she made her way to the podium. The new mayor, elected after the previous administration's collapse, approached the microphone. Her voice carried across the gathering. "Today, we don't just open a building. We mark a new chapter in our city's story." She held up a thick document. "With these reforms, we ensure no other family faces what the Averys endured." She began listing the changes. Complete ban on no-knock warrants. Civilian Oversight Board with full camera access. Union contract reforms requiring accountability for misconduct. Required community service hours for all officers. She paused, looking at Ruth. And mandatory de-escalation training led by healthcare professionals. Officer Miguel Alvarez, recently cleared of all charges, stood near the back in civilian clothes. He'd been the first to volunteer at the clinic, wanting to rebuild trust through service rather than force. Some of his fellow officers, who'd also chosen to speak truth, had joined him, forming a small but growing group committed to real change. Imani, now running the center's social media and community outreach, guided elderly residents to shaded seats. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from other cities requesting guidance on similar reforms. The Avery model was spreading, turning tragedy into transformation across the country. Deacon Brown led a short prayer, his voice strong despite his years. "Let this place heal bodies and souls," he intoned. "Let it stand as proof that justice, though delayed, cannot be denied when good people stand together." Ruth approached the ribbon, scissors ready. Marcus stood beside her, one hand gentle on her back. The morning breeze carried the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. With a clean snip, the ribbon fell, and applause rolled across the crowd like thunder. Inside, the center hummed with purpose. The main floor housed medical exam rooms, a pharmacy, and mental health offices. Upstairs, classrooms waited for Marcus's civic courage seminars, where he taught veterans and community elders how to organize, document, and demand accountability without violence. Tasha moved through the rooms, filming. Her documentary, Command Under Fire, was nearly complete. The story of how precision and patience had overcome brutal force. She captured shots of the waiting room walls, where framed news articles told the story. Justice Department arrests police leadership. Reform bill passes unanimously. Community center rises from ashes. Children from the neighborhood had painted small hummingbirds on tiles, which lined the hallways at kid height. Each one carried a message of hope. Peace lives here. Truth heals. Our door is open. Ruth led tours through the afternoon, showing visitors the free clinic spaces, the community meeting rooms, the garden being planted out back. Her medical colleagues had volunteered their services, creating a rotating schedule to ensure care would always be available. The crowd thinned as evening approached. Families headed home, elderly visitors were helped to cars, and the catering team packed up the last of the celebration food. Soft sunset light filtered through the west windows, making the hallways glow. Marcus watched Officer Alvarez helping an elderly man navigate the new automatic doors. The young officer's face showed peace, the kind that comes from choosing right over easy. He'd lost his badge, but found his conscience, and his example had inspired others to speak up. Tasha filmed one final interview with Ruth in the garden. The hummingbird pin sparkled as Ruth spoke about resilience, about how communities heal by caring for each other. Behind her, the mural's colors deepened in the fading light. As dusk settled, Marcus began his final rounds. He checked each room, making sure everything was secure for the night. The building seemed to breathe with possibility, every space designed to welcome, to heal, to teach. Ruth waited by the main entrance, watching him work. The last rays of sunlight caught the brass door handle, making it glow like amber. Marcus joined her, their fingers intertwining naturally. "This door stays open," he whispered. Ruth smiled softly, her hand covering his. Above them, the hummingbird mural caught the day's final light, its wings spread wide in eternal flight. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.